What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And this is a new series that I'm starting called Talking Law Tuesday. I have a playlist also called Talking Law, and so you can check that out. It'll be linked to at the top. Um, and I'm not a lawyer. I got a paralegal certificate when I was in prison. I have been a gang expert for defense attorneys and immigration attorneys around the country for over 12 years. So I have a little familiarity with the law. Um, that doesn't mean I know everything, but it's a subject that interests me. With that being said, welcome, appreciate you, and let's get into it. So on the thumbnail, I included a couple things. Deshaun Watson, player for the Cleveland Browns, who was recently suspended for 6 days. I thought we'd touch on that briefly. People have very strong opinions about whether that was a fair consequence or if he got off lightly or what. And then the Batmobile case. A lot of people are interested in the Batmobile case. I actually was gonna do a video on that in and of itself. I find it fascinating and hilarious. And so, for those that don't know, briefly, and then we'll get into it more. Um, uh, I'll play the news clip, but basically, sheriffs from San Mateo County in California, which is in the Bay Area, a county I have a lot of familiarity with, um, were sent to Indiana, I believe, to raid the Batmobile factory. If you didn't know there was a Batmobile factory, you're not alone. And and there it is. And so we're gonna get into why that happened, what some of the next steps are, and because I'm familiar with San Mateo County, I also have some information about the head sheriff involved and some of the others. There is a long legacy of corruption, uh, and so you guys will hear a little bit about that. I'm also working on a bigger spiel, probably a two-parter, that talks about the role of sheriff departments in American policing, period, and abusive the abusive nature that is inherent almost in their job description now, and the lack of accountability. And I'll be going through several incidences just over the last handful of years from around the country in which sheriffs have done what I would say the unimaginable. But if you've been watching policing in the United States anytime in the last, I don't know, 100 years, then there's not a lot that should be unimaginable. Uh, so we're going to talk about that. The Supreme Court passed a law related to New York State's gun permit laws. That has gotten a lot of attention in terms of the Second Amendment and how it's going to be applied and whatnot. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit. Let's do Deshaun Watson first because I think it's, in my opinion, it's pretty simple. And so we'll go from there. He's a quarterback, right? Throughout 2020 and 2021, he was accused of over 2 dozen, or at minimum 2 dozen, um, sexual misconduct allegations concerning massage therapists or women and ladies that had given him massages before, right? So they had reported it to the NFL. Again, 2 dozen of them, I believe they all had the same lawyer, um, sued Deshaun Watson, sued various entities. All of those, except for one, have been settled, but the details of those settlements are not public. Of course, that's pretty standard. Deshaun Watson has always said that he didn't do anything wrong. He has always he hasn't shown remorse because from his public statements, there's nothing for him to show remorse for. Right? There's a lot of people that were like, "Look, that should end this dude's career." Right? Um, Mo, that's a good idea. Let's touch on that in just a second. I like that. Eric, see, I see you. So there's a lot of people who feel like Deshaun Watson should have been suspended for the year at minimum, right? And that's actually what the NFL was advocating. But the NFL and the NFL Players Association had come to an agreement recently, prior to this, where when there's certain types of issues, they would get an independent arbiter, so an independent person to review the allegations in the case and then come forward with the recommendation, right? And my understanding is that recommendation, quote unquote, is binding. Right now, the NFL can appeal, the NFL Players Association can appeal on behalf of Watson. In this case, that's not going to happen. They've both said that they're going to accept what the independent person said. The independent person is a lady. She's a retired federal judge. But here's the thing: we hear a lot about these 24 cases, 24 cases, right? Dozens of cases. But that's not what was actually looked at. So the NFL looked at all the allegations and they found 12 cases where they said these cases, there's some merit to it. They couldn't interview a lot of the women. They were only able to interview 12. The other 12, for whatever reason, did not participate. And so those were kind of dismissed from the NFL standpoint because they couldn't investigate beyond what the allegations were because they couldn't talk to these women. So they kind of got dismissed. So now you were talking about 12, right? And of those 12, they looked into it. They found that 8, I believe, had some merit, right? And that's what they sent to the arbiter. The arbiter looked and found that there were 4 cases which had some merit. And based on his conduct in those 4 cases, right? Cases involving 4 different women, that is why she said, the punishment should be a 6-game suspension. Now, what was this misconduct? What was this behavior, right? Essentially, Deshaun Watson has what many people in the NFL that were familiar with him call the towel trick, right? And so the towel trick is this. He seeks out massages. He was not particularly concerned with the women's qualifications or anything else, right? He just said, hey, he sought out women who presented themselves as massagers, women that gave massages, right? And not in a like not in a prostitution sense, right? But some were licensed, some were not. Some operated out of centers. Some I think he just found online looking around. He didn't really care, right? And when he would go see these women, he would always say, I'm going to bring my own towel, right? So for these massages, you're not clothed, but parts of your body are covered. And so he went and he said, I'm going to bring my own towel. His gig was to bring a small towel, like washcloth, hand towel, size towel. Whereas normally, I've learned a lot more about the business of massage therapy in looking this stuff up than I knew before. But generally, you get covered with a sheet or like a sheet and a blanket, right? Folded to strategically cover areas. And so that's the norm for professionals. He'd be like, nah, we're not doing that. We're going to use my towel, my little towel. That was his trick. So he would put it over him and then encourage the women, they would do their massage and he would adjust his body. He'd get he would enjoy the massage, which then would make the women uncomfortable, right? Because at least for these 24 women, that's not what they were there for. And so, saludos, Coyo. And so, yes, massage therapy. So to him, apparently, it was amusing. To him, apparently, it was a form of flirtation. I can completely understand why there are a lot of women that would not find that flirtatious. But that seems to be what he was thinking, right? And I'd be willing to bet money, considering the guy has had way more massages with people than the ones in this case. There were probably some people that reacted the way that he hoped that they would react, right? And consensual adults, man, good for you, do your thing. But not everybody was into it. And then he would move, and because of the circumstances, he would move in a way that apparently some of the women came in contact with areas of his body that they did not want to massage. So he wasn't forcing people. He wasn't the arbiter said they were very much egregious, but also very much nonviolent, right? So he wasn't doing some things that I think folks were imagining, and from the reports I saw that were insinuated behind what he was doing. He wasn't actually assaulting people in the way that most of us think of when we think of that type of assault, right? However, he was crossing lines. He was making women uncomfortable. He was being very inappropriate by virtue of how he required the massage to be structured. So, Yasubio, I see you, sis. Like I said, I see you guys, man. And so that was that, right? And that's why the arbiter was like, he violated player conduct policies in the sense that he acted out of pocket, right? And the NFL has policies in place that say if you're employed by the NFL and you act a fool, there can be some consequences professionally. Now they're very inconsistent, to say the least, in how they apply that. But nonetheless, that's Deshaun Watson. So that's why he was only suspended for the 6 games instead of the whole season that the NFL wanted. I think part of that was because the NFL was trying to push back, was trying to demonstrate that they're mindful, because there is a culture of sexual harassment and sexually predatory behavior in terms of women doing their professional jobs with with NFL players and NFL associates and facing harassment that's uncalled for, and sometimes even worse. So there you go. So he's not. That's why there was no criminal charges also, because in the investigation, again, was he a bad client for some of these women? Yes. Was it inappropriate? Yes. Was is he a sexually deviant predator? I think that's a stretch, personally. And are your neighbors in trouble with him walking the streets? I don't think so. Now, hopefully, he realizes this stuff's not a game. Just because you are an incredibly wealthy, high-profile celebrity athlete does not mean that every woman you come in contact with wants to get down with you. You know what I'm saying? And so there you go. That's the Deshaun Watson thing. I'm happy to entertain more comments on it. Yeah, I don't know how the Browns are going to do this year. I'm not some real Deshaun Watson fan, to be honest. So I don't know, right? I don't know what's going to happen. But yes, you're right. There are a lot of accusations, but again, the media can be misleading, to say the least, in how they present accusations, and especially when they're like, we don't have the details, but, and then you used very charged words, very loaded terms, that when your average person hears them, they interpret them to mean something horrible. And they generally do mean something horrible. And again, I'm not saying this was not horrible. It was not it wasn't stuff that's going to get you whacked in prison if you catch a case for that and go behind the wall. So there you go. Way to throw in prison experience with every damn conversation. And so, yeah, he was. And Peyton Manning, there's incredibly credible, if you could say those words back to back, allegations about what Peyton Manning has done, and went so far as to effectively derail this very professional, very well respected woman's career with the help of his father Archie Banner, with the help of Tennessee, the University of the Vols, and he did a lot, man, and a lot of unwanted contact and harassment and everything, and that got brushed under the rug, right? So I think the NFL is trying to show that those days are over, even though none of those people were ever required to even acknowledge that the shit they did was real. So there you go on that one, right? And so it is, and apparently some of those women did. To be fair, Antonio, some of those women, at least some, did make that point. They expressed at the time that they didn't like it, they weren't enjoying it, like that it was inappropriate, unacceptable, and some of them stopped the massage and was like, I'm done, right? And it's not like he chased them down and locked them in a room, right? Again, so it's hard. And I want to say up front, as a guy, I can try to be empathetic. That's not behavior I would do. I don't go get massages. But I try to be empathetic. I try to be reasonable. I try to hear the women in my life and the women who speak publicly who I don't know, um, and gain a better understanding, because I grew up in a different culture and I grew up a different gender. So there is a bias there for myself. I'm not saying that about all men, but for myself, I recognize there's a bias in there. I do my best to overcome that and educate myself past that, and just check my own behaviors and check my own privileges, so to speak. I I do not know that I get it right all the time. I try, right? And so uh, I'm sure there's women that have very strong views on this, and I don't think they all have the same strong view. Um, but uh, that's my take on it, right? Uh, well, I don't. I hear you, Lee. I hear you, and I think that I think there's room for that, right? There are going to be people who believe that Deshaun Watson got away with something, right? And I can't argue with that, right? There's going to be people that believe that he got a fair punishment. There's going to be people believe that he got overly punished. I think how you view that in some sense is a reflection of how you view allegations like this on a broader scale. I don't know. I don't want to go too far into what other people may be thinking. They can speak for themselves like you are. But I don't think you're alone in that thought, at all, right? And so they do, and there's a line there. But I think also, man, the dude's in the NFL. He's been playing football and he's been getting muscle massages by people that are employed by the team or employed by the league or whatever for a really long time. He's got to know that shit ain't cool. But again, I would also imagine that he has had some success, for lack of a better term, taking that approach. And just because you're in the NFL and you're making millions of dollars doesn't necessarily mean you're a mature person in how you deal with others. And sometimes the bubble that these star athletes are put in from the time of when they're younger, I think can influence a distorted view of the world around them, right? And of their place in that world. I'm not going to say that's the case with Deshaun Watson. I don't know the dude. I'm not his psychologist, right? But I think that exists in a general sense amongst a lot of athletes, right? Let me see. Knowing professional athletes, the physical therapists at most colleges and pro teams be doing all the players at a rate that's more often than not. He may have been accustomed to that. Yeah, see, and I don't have that kind of inside scoop with professional athletes. I did a training for professional athletes once upon a time, including Cam Newton when I lived in Florida at this camp that elite athletes go to all the time. But it didn't have nothing to do with this stuff. It was more along the lines of, look, man, you're about to be a ridiculous millionaire. If you got a favorite restaurant, don't be tagging yourself in that favorite restaurant all the time, because somebody's going to catch up and rob you, and that kind of stuff. So let's see. You guys ready for the Batman story? We got 40 people in here. Are you ready, though? Or are you really ready? Watch this. So I'm going to play this segment. This is ridiculous. All right, here we go. I'm going to have to pause it periodically so that YouTube doesn't yell at me and flag me saying that I'm violating a copyright. But I'm allowed to opine on public news. Here you go.
One of the sheriff's friends ordered a Batmobile and wasn't happy with how long it was taking to deliver. The I-Team's Dan Noyes is here with a story that you'll see only on 7.
Well, Dan, your public money paid for the trip last week by the sheriff's investigators. 4 round-trip plane tickets, 3 nights of hotels, meals, rental cars, and a lot of overtime. All because of a friend of the sheriff can't wait for his Batmobile.
Real estate is a lot like surfing.
Sam...
Hey, doesn't that dude look kind of like Richard Branson, the Virgin America, Virgin Music dude? Anyways, let's go on. He's a real estate agent.
Ignastio is a real estate agent who lives in Atherton.
And suddenly, the perfect wave shows right up in front of you. You got to be ready to catch it.
This profile video...
Have you ever seen a real estate agent commercial like that? Like really? A dude riding around on a surfboard? Let's go.
He posted online shows Ignastio likes expensive toys. He ordered a $210,000 Batmobile from the only builder licensed by DC Comics. Fiberglass.
Okay. Who knew that there was a licensed Batmobile builder in the United States, right? I did not know this was a thing. Apparently, if you have money like that, then you would know these things. I did not know that there was an official Batmobile creator licensed by DC Comics. I'm going to say this so I don't pause it again. For somebody making cars that cost $200,000 a piece, this is a very low budget commercial. The girl looks kind of like a hostage. And the slamming of the car door sounds like throwing an aluminum can across a room, in my opinion. I don't know what it's supposed to sound like when you deal with a bat car, because I've never had one. But it seems a little odd. Like she seems a little Stockholm syndrome, you know? Let's go.
Freaks of Logansport, Indiana.
You've wanted one since you were a kid, and now you can have your very own replica of the Batmobile.
Complete with roll-top dashboard, flashing beacon light, detectoscope,
And even a working flamethrower.
Owner Mark Raycup has 9 Batmobiles in production. He tells me Ignastio was first in line and he paid $170,000, but then missed a $20,000 payment.
And he disappeared on me for over 8 months, almost 9 months.
Raycup moved.
That dude wanted his money. And she sounds like she's under 18. So even rich people have to pay what they're supposed to pay, right? If you owe me a $20,000 payment or whatever it was, I'm pausing work too, right? And this dude, just so you know, I've done some research on the company. He is not. There's no shortage of people lining up to buy the Batmobile. Apparently, there's a lot of people in the U.S. who are willing to pay $200,000 for a very well polished replica of a 1966 car. Most of us never even saw on TV. But anyways, go ahead.
Ignastio to the bottom of the list. He'd have to wait a year and a half or 2 for his Batmobile.
He didn't like that. He exploded. He did pay off the entire car at that point, but he was absolutely livid to find out that his car was going to be delayed.
Ignastio filed a complaint with Atherton Police, but last September, the San Mateo County District Attorney declined to bring criminal charges at this time, according to this letter to the Batmobile builder. Ignastio also filed a lawsuit in San Mateo County Superior Court alleging breach of contract and fraud, but this past March, a judge dismissed the case, saying Indiana is the proper venue. Then,
Man. Suavecito, I see you. Holy drug, that's a good one. So, hell hath no fury, like a very, very rich surfer real estate agent who doesn't get his toy when he wants it, right? That dude was hot. He was like, I'm going to the cops. For those of you unfamiliar with the Bay Area, Atherton is an incredibly wealthy, very little town, right? It's by Stanford University, very close to Stanford University. It's also by East Menlo Park and East Palo Alto, which in Bay Area terms was the site of abject poverty for the vast majority of its existence. And so, yeah, it's a very small town. I don't think the Atherton police force has more than 5 people on it. And so it's no wonder that they were like, come on, dude, relax. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that is not the first time that this individual has gone to the Atherton Police Department to complain about somebody doing something that his entitled elite ass did not like very much. Just again, I don't know that for sure, but it's my thought. This shit here, though.
Sources inside the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department tell me the realtor asked his Facebook friend, Sheriff Carlos Bolanos, to intervene. He sent a lieutenant, sergeant, and 2 deputies to Indiana. They raided Fiberglass Freaks last week, July 19th.
Then they showed the warrant saying that they were here to seize anything to do with his car. So I thought, oh, they're coming in to pick up his car, which is right behind me, by the way. So I thought I was going to have to move my other Batmobiles out of the way to be able to let them take this car.
But
hey, he was like, you know what? You want to fucking take it, right? And the cops looked and was like, how the hell are we going to get this all the way from Indiana back to California? So they were like, nah, you know what? Just keep it. And then watch what happens.
Investigators took only 2 files of documents, according to the search warrant return. Rakeup says they read his Miranda rights, brought him to the local jail for an hour, but let him go. He only later found out they got a warrant for his Gmail, contacts, and photos, that they froze his bank account and charged him in California with 2 felonies, obtaining money by false pretenses and diversion of construction funds.
I was horrified. I've never gone through anything like this ever before in my life. I am on the side of good. I as a Batman fan since I was 2 years old, this was a completely opposite side. I love 66 Batman, and Batman always stood with the law.
I interviewed the San Mateo County Deputy District Attorney prosecuting this case. You wrote a letter to Rakeup in September of last year saying that there would be no criminal charges. What changed?
Additional investigation. The detectives were able to obtain search warrants and obtain additional evidence.
Marie McLaughlin would not discuss that additional evidence or the sheriff's unusual step of sending 4 investigators across the country for what Rakeup argues is a simple business dispute. After the case went nowhere with the first criminal case, the civil case, is the sheriff stepping in for a friend here?
I can't speak to that. I have no knowledge about what relationship, if any, the sheriff has with the victim.
I wanted to talk to Sheriff Bolanos about Sam Edignastio and about the use of public funds. 4 round-trip airline tickets, hotels for 3 nights, meals, overtime. He didn't return my repeated calls and texts to his personal cell phone. His office confirmed he's away on a month of vacation.
Wait a minute. He's on a month-long vacation as the sheriff of a pretty populated county. Like San Mateo County, that's a legit county. It's not a bunch of farmland, right? Shout out to the counties that have a bunch of farmland. But this fool is like, I'm gone for a month. That's a wrap. So sorry I can't talk to you right now. But wait till you hear about this dude Bolanos. I watch. This is not by any stretch the weirdest thing he's been involved in. So
he leaves office in January after losing the election. The undersheriff now in charge, Mark Robbins, and the department spokesman, Lieutenant Eamon Allen, refused my request for an interview, citing the ongoing investigation.
I just can't imagine why it's in criminal court. It shocks me that it's in criminal court.
I ran the case by Tony Brass, former prosecutor for San Francisco and the U.S. Attorney's Office. He says the squabble over a luxury item, the Batmobile, belongs in Indiana civil court, with no involvement by the San Mateo County Sheriff's Department.
It simply defies reason in my view, why so many people, so many high-ranking members of law enforcement would have to go and enforce something so unnecessary and so trivial.
I did reach Sam Ignacio by phone in Greece where he's on vacation. He was surprised when I asked about the Batmobile. He said, quote, "I'm dealing with someone privately on that." I asked him, "Who's that?" He hung up. Investigating this story, I learned something more about Mark Rakup. He's a minister.
Good evening.
I watched his church sermon this past Sunday online.
It's the only thing that helps me through this, Dan. I should expect trials and tribulations. It's just part of being a Christian. And as a preacher...
Okay, is it just me, and maybe it's from the Deshaun Watson story, but does that red object in the upper right-hand corner of the screen look like it belongs on a Batmobile? Because that, I don't know. When I first seen it, I was like, wait a minute, what the hell was that? All right, let's go.
This is an attempt to besmirch my reputation.
I reached the lawyer for Sam Ignacio. He also didn't want to go on camera, but said his client is returning from Greece in a few days, and both of them will sit down for an interview. We'll see. Mark Rakup tells me he'll be flying.
Oh, he's flying back
here for his first court appearance in 3 weeks. And Dan and Karina, I'll keep an eye on this.
Here it turns out.
So, the damn pastor, right? Reverend Robin, he's got to fly all the way out to San Mateo County to go to court. And so you might be thinking, this is odd. What's up, Frank's Positive Vibes? Go check out Frank's channel, man. I posted one of his motivations this morning on my community page, and I found it motivating. So a couple things real quick on the pastor, and then we'll get into the legal stuff, right? So when he says, as a Christian, I should expect trials and tribulations. So I'm a reader of scripture. I'm a believer in the teachings of Jesus. This is not going to become a religious message. There's a lot of people that do not identify as Christians that I really like and love. And there's a lot of people that do that I would not want to be around if you paid me to. Everybody in life should expect trials and tribulations. You don't get trials and tribulations because of your spiritual beliefs. You get trials and tribulations because, life is rough sometimes, right? And in this case, you get trials and tribulations because you're building $200,000 cars made out of Bondo with some fucking stickers from a Mattel box on them, and rich people get mad, right? So that's what that is. But like I said, but wait, there's more. So who's this Bolano dude? I don't know if vegan prison stories. I don't know if Vegas prison stories is still here, but if he is, shout out Vegas. Vegas factors into this. Why? Because as undersheriff, which is like Sheriff Junior of San Mateo County, the long arm of the law, right? So look, as undersheriff, let me pull up my notes just to make sure that you guys get it all right. So in 2007, Monks, right? The dude's name is Monks with a U, not an O. He was the sheriff of San Mateo County. He had been the sheriff for a very long time. Or no, he got sworn in as sheriff in 2007, but he had been with the department for a very long time, right? And Bolanos is undersheriff. So that happens in, I believe, January of 2007. That's normally when people get sworn in, yeah? April of 2007, Monks, the sheriff of San Mateo County, and Bolanos, the fucking Joker in this case, they get busted in Vegas by the feds because the feds are doing a sting on illegal brothels trafficking in underage women. So a sex trafficking ring that operated illegal brothels with underage girls, right? Called Operation Dollhouse. You can't make this up. Operation Dollhouse. They got busted right there, right? Now, it's because they were in Vegas because like some charity run or something for cops, right? And so Monks said, well, my muscles were sore and I needed a massage. Cue in Deshaun Watson. No, but the place he went, I believe I have a picture of it on my computer. In fact, I know I do. The place that he went was not a massage parlor whatsoever. Let me find the picture. Look, the place that he went was a house. I will show you the exact house, as a matter of fact, right now. Let me see. Video file, no. All right, let me just do this. Let me share my screen real quick because it's kind of relevant, right? It's a tiny picture of the house, actually, so my bad. But look, let me go to a window. Here you go. Share. Do you see that house? That's the place he went for a massage because his muscles were sore. That looks like a trap house in East Palo Alto. That's what that looks like, right? So anyways, so they get busted. The feds don't prosecute. They don't, right? Because they're cops, right? Cops are cops. You know, you can kind of do whatever you want, right? And so they come back to San Mateo County, but this is not like top secret information. People know. And they're like, hey, this is problematic, homie, right? So they say, hey, city council needs to look at the sheriff and the undersheriff. Like, you used county funds to go out there. Do you know that they said, well, we used county funds to go to Vegas, but we did not use county funds to pay for the rental car that we took to the trap house where they were having an underage sex trafficking ring, right? So therefore, we didn't do anything wrong. The board of supervisors in the county was like, I mean, you know, what are you going to do? The DA's office was like, it is so unfair that you guys are being dragged through the mud of the media like this, man. But we know. Those who know, know. And yeah, we got you. So judges, the district attorney, Wagstaff, who's corrupt as they get as well, right? And doesn't like me because I beat 2 murder cases that he prosecuted. But the sheriff's department, there's a history of corruption. Basically, they should be indicted under RICO, right? They are a racketeering conspiracy. So that has existed for decades and decades and decades under multiple district attorneys and multiple sheriffs and everything else, right? Pancho said what's the address for educational purposes. So they don't get in trouble. They stay sheriff and undersheriff, right? 2008, Jackie Spear and what's the other one? I think Barbara Boxer, some of those ladies, they're from San Mateo County, right? They're like, hey, what the hell is going on right here? And everybody's like, nah, man, our hands are tied. The sheriff is an elected office, so we can't just kick him out. We can't really punish him in any way. Now, is it a coincidence that the sheriff contributes the maximum amount, and I would imagine more so, to the campaigns of all of these, county board of supervisors people? Of course not. So look, and Jenny Joyce will remember this one, I think, because I think she was still out in Ipe when this happened. But so probation is also in on this, right? In 2013, there's this dude, Stuart Forrest. He's the head probation officer for San Mateo County, right? So he oversaw the juvenile hall in particular. The county jails are under the sheriff, but probation overseeing all juvenile stuff, right? And then obviously some adult stuff as well. He had been with the department for 30-something years, right? This fool gets popped for having pictures of children in, you know what I mean? In ways that would send Cain Velasquez after you, right? And any other level-headed adult. So young boys, tied up, compromising positions. He paid for these pictures. Mind you, this dude oversees juvenile hall. I was on the board of directors for the chaplaincy at juvenile hall at the time. I was up in juvenile hall a few times a week at minimum, working with kids from Redwood City and East Palo Alto, East Menlo Park, right? And some South City cats. So I seen him up there all the time. And it's scary, right? That this dude with this power also had this demon, right? And I don't say that to minimize it. It's not, oh, I have this demon I'm wrestling with. He was a monster. So first he argues, hey man, I was doing research because San Mateo County is launching this new thing against sex trafficking. Mind you, what I just told you about these dudes at the underage sex trafficking house in Vegas, right? So they go to arrest him, the feds, because county law enforcement is not sweating him. They apologize for having to put him on leave. They apologize to a dude who's caught with over 400 images of boys between the ages of 6 and 12 years old. They apologize like, nah, bro, you can't come to the office right now. The office is at the fucking juvenile hall, right? When they go to arrest him, he's at his house. He has a knife to his neck. He'd already cut his neck. He has a letter written on his desk next to him at his house that tells his family, I'm sorry, I'm finally free now. You're better off without me, right? He tells the cops, I'm going to kill myself. They tase him to get him to drop the knife, and they arrest him, right? So fair to say, that's kind of admitting guilt, yeah? Like you have a suicide note saying, hey, I'm finally going to be free. And you're attempting to harm yourself when you're arrested. So he gets arrested, right? His punishment for over 400 of these images is 10 months in custody and 3 years probation, right? That's how they get down. But wait, there's more. So, and this is not an exhaustive list of San Mateo County corruption, but this is just so you guys know, this Batmobile story is funny, but underneath it is a very, very harmful system that doesn't just impact pastors and underoos in Indiana building cars, right? It more directly impacts residents of San Mateo County, incarcerated men and children and women in San Mateo County, everybody. So in 2014, this dude, Deputy Juan Lopez, he decides he's going to run against Sheriff Monks, right? Because he's like, Sheriff Monks is embarrassing the sheriff's department. You know what I mean? So he says, I'm going to run against Sheriff Monks. The election board of the county dogs his paperwork. So he never shows up on the ballot. They're laughing at him like, yeah, right, fool, you're going to run against Monks. Like, we're all in his pocket. All county administrators, everybody from the top down is in his pocket. You're tripping. He's like, nah, man, he's one of the good cops. I'm going to be a good cop, right? And I'm going to fight against this. You know what I mean? So he runs. But his name isn't even on the ballot. He's a write-in candidate. So he doesn't win. Big shock. But it doesn't end there. Right afterwards, not right like that day, but within a few months, the dude gets arrested as a part of a conspiracy to smuggle 2 cell phones into the county jail, right? This is in 2014. They arrest him at gunpoint on his day off. They accuse him of election fraud because he didn't actually live in San Mateo County. But they raided his fiance's house where he lived and where they had children. They separated the children from the mother, interrogated the children about their dad. Like, the layers of fuckery were amazing. They took his license and told him he can't be a sheriff anymore because he got a ticket in Torrance, California. He was on duty in San Mateo County the time that he got this ticket in Torrance, California. In other words, he wasn't there. People hacked into the DMV system and put his driver's license on the name of on a ticket for somebody else named Juan Lopez in Torrance, California. And then we're like, oh, you got a ticket and didn't tell us. He's like, I have my time sheets. I have all my stuff. Dude, I was here working. You guys know this. They dogged his ass, right? And I say did, but they still are. 7.5 years later, he is still going to court. Still, after 7.5 years, right? Multiple felony accounts. But his thing is, I'm not pleading out to nothing. I'm not doing nothing, right? I want a jury trial. I want to go to trial, and I want these people to take the stand against me because I got some shit to say too. He sued the county for $10 million, right? That lawsuit is on hold pending this because a lot of it is employment-based, and these charges to some degree are employment-based, right? But they fuck with the wrong dude. Like, they picked on the wrong Mexican because he's like, oh, you want smoke? I got smoke for you. And he's writing it out. A judge on his case got kicked off his case because the judge perjured himself in conversations with the DA. Like, the layers of this dude's case is insane. I'm going to get the reporter that covers this most closely, and I'm going to wind up getting him on a channel at one of these points. Watch. But so yeah. So anyways, it gets even better. Don't trip. We're still not done. 32 people rock with me for a minute. So 2016, Monks retires. He's like, you know what? I'm done. I'll let you're done. You've done a lot in San Mateo County in 10 years. Bolanos is the natural to get appointed. Barber boxers, state senators, everybody's like, do not appoint this dude Bolanos, the undersheriff. The whole system's corrupt. It doesn't look good. It's not good. Do not appoint him. Have an election and don't appoint anybody in the meantime. They're like, nah, it's cool, man. The county board of supervisors appoints Bolanos. I think all but maybe 2 of them were also county board of supervisor people at the time when these fools got busted at the dollhouse operation, right? Mind you, none of them have ever been busted by local authorities, only the feds. Yeah? So 2016, because of the timeline, Bolanos has to run, right? He was appointed, 2018, he has to run because it's election time. So he runs and he wins. Big surprise. Like the next year, the sheriff who runs the Sheriff Activity League, which is one of the programs that Bolanos is most proud of and runs on, she gets arrested by the state attorney general. Why did she get arrested? A corruption investigation. She resigns in 2020 as sheriff, right? Because the state attorney general is doing a corruption investigation. The county is doing a parallel investigation. The county finds that she didn't do anything really wrong. The state attorney general is like, you're fucking crazy. She was embezzling funds from the Bolanos campaign, right? She was embezzling money. She was charged by the state attorney general with 7 felonies, embezzling and money laundering, right? She later resigned. She resigned, but she resigned from the Sheriff Activity League first. Then in 2022, she resigns, period, from the sheriff's department. Before that, she was still getting paid, right? Administrative leave. We've heard that before. So she has to resign as a sheriff. She takes a deal. The deal she takes is she pled guilty to a wobbler. So she pled guilty to an embezzling charge. She pled out to a felony. When she gets off probation, it's dropped down to a misdemeanor. So it's what in California we call a wobbler, a case that could be charged either way, right? She got probation. She went from 7 felony accounts of embezzling and money laundering related to the election campaign of a sheriff who has a long history, and the broad gets probation, right? 2022, Christina Corpus beats Bolanos to be sheriff. That's why the dude is gone right now. That's why he's not tripping. He's in office technically, but he gets replaced, I think, in January. So he's like, but you can't do nothing to me. The truth is, a lot could be done to dude, but none of the people in power want to do it because that's their homeboy, right? So that's why I told you I was gonna do a whole video on it, right? Like, this shit is crazy. You know what I mean? The gun law in New York. So it does. The Supreme Court did not say that everybody who wants a gun can go get a gun. Okay, that's not what they said at all. What they said was there are 5 states: California, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, I think, and New York, right, if I remember right, who have laws in which you need to show proper cause, quote unquote, under their state laws. You have to show proper cause for why you need the ability to use a gun for self-defense outside of your home, why you need a permit to carry a gun, right? And those laws are oftentimes not applied equally. There's no very clear standard of what qualifies as proper cause, right? It's subjective. And the Supreme Court said you can't do that, right? It's unevenly applied. You can't have uneven stuff, right? Mo, yeah, I'm gonna cover that too. Fresno got more people employed by the police department. It has people employed by the police department that have more murders and more shootings as police officers than most of the people that are arrested in the streets for clapping folks. It's insane. But so what the Supreme Court did say is there has to be a standard that is uniform, right? That applies to everybody, and basically a check the box. If you check these boxes, then you get this prize, no matter who you are. If you check the boxes, you get the prize. You ain't got to explain shit. So states need to have laws like that, which most states do, right? But also, whatever your laws are, they have to, this was Clarence Thomas's 2 cents, right, in the opinion. They must be consistent with the text, history, and tradition of the original intent of the Second Amendment. So that is why the Second Amendment advocates, right, are excited, because they're like, now every law, not just permit laws, but every gun law is going to have to stand up to the scrutiny of, does this match the text, history, and tradition of the original intent of the Second Amendment? Now that's funny because in the early days, after the Second Amendment, after the Civil War, right? Gun control laws were much more strict than they are now. And these were people that were like, they were in the conversations around Second Amendment. They're in it, you know what I mean? That's their lineage, so to speak. Even before the Civil War. The idea of who could have a gun. Now, people were required to have a gun, required to have a rifle, for the purposes of defending your neighborhood. But remember, you didn't really have law enforcement at the time. Militias were the sheriffs, right? Essentially, and it was a hostile environment, right? You didn't have established governments, established boundaries, established this, and that. But you couldn't just walk around with a banger on your waist. Like the whole Wild West and cowboys and everybody run around and shootouts and all that shit in the streets, that happened in non-established areas, right? That happened during basically American colonialism. But in the East Coast, where you had established communities and governments and everything else, you couldn't do that. Hell no, right? And so it'll be interesting because I think that the American public has very wide range of views as to what counts as text, history, and tradition of the original Second Amendment. And it'll be interesting where the court comes down on that. A lot of states are just rewriting their laws, and they're rewriting their laws in a way that that will, they believe, stand up or not be inconsistent with the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court also didn't say anything about the types of guns people are able to have, or extended capacity magazines, or anything else, right? And so it'll be interesting how it goes. The Supreme Court in general is it's like the strict constructionist type of people, which is funny, not in really a haha way, but in the history of the United States, there's been like less than 10 Supreme Court justices that have this particular judicial philosophy, right? In the history of the Supreme Court, over half of them are on the Supreme Court right now, right? So this is not a common judicial philosophy historically. This is not really consistent with how the court has operated historically, whether conservative leaning or right leaning or left leaning. It is fair to say that the Supreme Court now is different. I don't want to say radical because that's kind of a loaded term, right? Some people are very happy with the way it's working, and some people are ready to move out of the country, right? But very few, I've never really in history has there been a Supreme Court that thinks the way that this Supreme Court does. So the impact that that's going to have on laws is unknown. And it has been a strategic effort by Republicans in this country for a very long time. And whether you like the results of what they've accomplished or not, they have been borderline genius as a agenda, right? Not individuals, but as an agenda in doing this. And it's taken them decades and decades and decades. But they've done it, right? And even Newt Gingrich knew the future of the battles is in the courts, right? And what was that, like 25 years ago? So that's the reason Mitch McConnell has remained, the highest ranking Republican in Congress for all this time, because he gets them appointed. He gets these judges appointed to courts and everything else that people don't ever pay attention to. Appellate courts here and appellate courts there. But those appellate courts are the feeding grounds for higher appellate court judges, and then the feeding grounds for ultimately the Supreme Court. And so, and they're appointed, right? Once you get put in position, your job can't be taken unless you do something radically extreme and get caught by people who want to hold you accountable for doing something radically extreme. And that almost never happens in this country. At any court level, anywhere, that almost never happens. And so, yeah, a lot of laws are going to change. And that's why states are rushing towards laws that have to do with like same-sex marriage, because the concept of same-sex marriage does not align with the judicial philosophy that the Supreme Court expressed recently, right? In particular, the abortion one, right? Which personally, I'm all for a woman's right to choose. If you don't agree with that, then that's fine, but that's where I'm at. But as somebody who kind of studies the law and has a lot of interest in the law, I'm not going to get into the social and moral stuff, because if you have your mind made up, then nothing I say is going to change your mind, and you're not going to change mine on a social or moral level. So why bother arguing? But on a strictly legal level, Roe v. Wade was written in a way that was kind of bad law from the beginning. Not that what it sought to achieve was bad, but the way the law was not written, because it actually was never written, but the way that it was interpreted by the court really wasn't that should not have been a constitutional issue ever. That's not a constitutional issue, according to how the Constitution is supposed to operate, right? Again, I'm not getting into the moral social. Me personally, I don't make those decisions because I don't carry those kids, you know. But most legal scholars would agree that on real evaluation, the court did wrong in that. They made it too sweeping. They everything. It was too much. And this court called them on it. And in that way, I think it was fair for it to get overturned from a strictly legal thing. You know, it wasn't done right. You know, the thought process, the rationale behind it wasn't legally sound. All right, people, help us move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it, and help your community because they need you. And I'll catch you guys on the next one, man. Take care.